Why use lot effort when few effort do trick? In the snapshot of life the way that it is for many of us right now, it genuinely do be the way that it is sometimes. Hold on, let me get through one sentence with good grammar. Whether you're going through the soul-crushing motivational burnout of a pandemic or not, there's actually a very good reason to be making the smallest things you can. We're going to talk about why that is, what those small projects consist of logistically, and how you can start making and learning faster. In a world of vast dozen-season anime arcs and 20-movie cinematic universes, why would someone ever settle for smaller? Listen, I'm not trying to crush your dreams. No one said that you can never make those things, but there's value in making something feasible right now. For one thing, it's a great way to learn about the aspects of your project that you weren't familiar with. If you do poorly, probably because of inexperience, you will have failed faster. A phrase that, despite it containing a word sounding like failure, is a really good thing. And most importantly, you will have fought back against the largest enemy of every creative soul, expectation. Imagine for a moment the mental process this poor purple soul goes through when he sees a beautiful lady across the room. Perhaps immediately he's consumed with infatuation, imagining their children or their life traveling the globe or some picturesque vignette of them laughing. The only problem is that he hasn't even talked to her yet. Between the point A of his current scenario and the point B of his dream scenario is a wide chasm of things like hard work, the fact that she is a flawed individual just like him, unexpected hardships, and the fact that she claps when the plane lands. If it's really love, they'll be able to get through it, but before he walks up to her and says, "Hey, where should our dream house be? I'm more of a forest guy, but an argument could be made for beachfront property," maybe instead he should just say, "Hi." When we get an idea for a project, it really is like infatuation. The sky is the limit for what sort of story you want to tell, how many elements or gameplay mechanics or trilogies it will take up. The easiest thing that you can do is raise your expectations, because it takes no actual work. And if you're inexperienced with projects of this kind, most likely those expectations are unrealistic. The longer we spend dreaming about our projects, the more attached we get, and the harder it will be to execute them poorly, or even to start. Most often, the thing that gets in your way is expectation that something needs to be better, and so you can't make progress until that better is met. So as much as you and I might be the kings and queens of hustling harder, putting more work in, perfecting the art of perfectionism, the best way for us to move forward and learn is through minimum viable projects. Projects that barely pass for completed things. Now that might sound unappealing to you, but wait until you're 5 years deep or 1 year deep on your first animated project ever, and realize that you wish you could go back to the beginning and fix everything that you've gotten better at since then. That's going to be an inherent part of the process no matter how many times you've done this. But if it's your first, that gap is going to be painfully wide. So I've gone through the trouble of assembling what a minimum viable project looks like for basically anything that involves characters or stories, what elements you'll need to produce, and what skills you're going to either need going in or skills you'll be forced to learn out of necessity, which by the way, I've always liked learning that way. First up, for every aspiring comic artist planning their saga to rival One Piece, here is your MVP. A short 6-page comic with about 6 panels per page about 2 characters in a situation. What you will need in order to make this is 1, your 2 characters, what they will look like, possibly some character turnarounds. 2, a story or script or summary of what will happen before you go through the hard work of drawing it all. 3, you'll need to be able to draw and format comic panels, word panels, and lettering if your story isn't silent. And 4, since your characters most likely aren't going to exist on a blank background, you will need some sort of setting, which involves either an environment, buildings, props, things like that, which we talked about in last week's video. Some of the skills that you will either need or will put your feet to the fire while making this are drawing, being able to draw characters, being able to tell a clear and understandable story, conveying motion and emotion with your comic, being able to be concise and use brevity. People don't pick up a comic usually to read 7-paragraph speech bubbles. And depending on how you choose to render your comic, you'll be dealing with inking, color theory, perspective, and consistency redrawing characters. It's a lot of things, but do you see how 6 pages makes it a whole lot more manageable? Most likely, too, you'll blow past the expected time you give yourself to make the thing, often by at least 50%, but better 50% on 6 pages than on 600. Next up, for all the would-be writers hoping for their own young adult quadrilogy of novels or to be picked up after their first screenplay, a written short story about the interactions between two characters, again, going through one situation. It could be 3 pages or 1,000 words. You'll need 2 characters who you understand well enough, their personality, a little about their backstory, which is all information for you that you may not choose to include in the story. You'll need the conflict, which is either something internal between them or external that they should deal with. And you should probably have a good understanding of what you are trying to say with the story, either a theme or moral, or is one of these characters ultimately right? Or is there a sort of thesis, antithesis, synthesis arc that they go through where both of them are a little right? Skills-wise, this project will make you deal with descriptive writing, narrative writing. Again, you're dealing with brevity, what information is necessary to include and what isn't, and of course with grammar, spelling, and clarity of thought. Let's get into motion now. Say you want to make an animated short. A lot of student films are almost a good example of this, but you have to realize the amount of time that goes into even a minute of animation, and that it can often be a collaborative process with multiple students. So once again, you're going to tell a very short story. It could even be something like the animated version of a 4-panel comic strip. Make your setting simple. Think of the Pixar short Luxo Jr. It only has 2 characters, 1 prop, no camera changes, and a very simple background. It was still a lot of work, but that trims a lot of the fat. You'll need 1 or 2 characters, and you'll definitely benefit from having a character sheet for these. 2, you'll need a short story or description of what happens. 3, a storyboard briefly showing how this story is carried out and what things move when. 4, a setting including environments and props. 5, you'll need audio, which most visual artists aren't really thinking about until it's too late. You might animate silently to an existing song, like the Fantasia shorts. You might find or record sound effects that relate to what's happening on screen. You might cast some friends to do the voice work for your characters, or you might use a combination of all 3. 6, it would be very helpful to assemble your audio and storyboard into an animatic, which is a rough approximation with timing of what your final work will look like. Depending on if your project is animated frame by rigged puppet or in 3D, will mean learning the specifics of those mediums. For example, 3D, that means things like modeling, rendering, rigging, texturing, lighting, and so forth. The things you'll learn while doing this? Oh boy, if it's 2D, then redrawing things consistently for one. It may only take a few frames of animation before you drastically simplify your character. You'll learn about timing and the principles of animation as you go. And just because you spent a lot of time on a scene does not mean that you have that many frames. You'll learn about compositing and frame rates and syncing audio to motion, and maybe lip syncing, camera movements, all on top of a lot of the things that we talked about with the comic project. Next up, say you want to make your own game, and maybe you're feeling like this guy, who even if it takes 5 years, will not rest until someone else has made his incredible, vague mishmash of genres with incredible creep scope. Sorry to pick on this example that was circulating earlier this week, but this is like a classic example of expectations despite not actually having any experience in the games industry as this person has. It's kind of the equivalent of seeing Queen Elizabeth on a coin and saying, "I'm going to marry her, and our royal wedding will be twice what her and Philip had." For a game, make a single screen concept with 1 mechanic and 1 win condition. You might need a character, an enemy, a prop, a background. You'll also need all the code, which I definitely know tons about, but I'm just choosing not to speak to.
You'll need mesh renderer, mesh baker, mesh toaster.
A lot of teams will participate in 24-hour game jams in order to refine their ability to create games. Otherwise, see what you could feasibly manage in a month's time. From there, you'll learn about mechanics, gameplay loops, clarity in your design, the feel of the gameplay, and how to build something bigger or more interesting next time. Even talking about these processes might make you go, yikes, that sounds like a lot of work. And it is, that's sort of the point. But it'd be so much better for you to do the work of getting her number, so to speak, having conversations, going on dates, maybe even getting rejected, instead of sitting idly for eternity, dreaming about what could be. Once you know the elements that go into making the thing, maybe you can organize them into a list with a little bit of an estimate of time on what each step will take you to complete. And if organizing your project sounds too grown-up and stockbrokery for your creative soul, it's a lot better to know what step is next in the process instead of stewing in chaos at the starting line going, I wonder what I should do. Once you've completed a minimum viable project, no matter how small it seemed at the beginning, you will have so much pride in what you created. You'll have learned a ton about the craft, you'll know what things you want to do better next time, and pain points that you might want to practice on in between projects. And you'll have a better appreciation for how large a task it is when other creators are making their own gigantic feature-length projects. In case you missed last week's Character Design Forge virtual booth over on Twitch, we had a fantastic time, and there were a few announcements that you might have missed. So working backwards as far as release dates are concerned, in 2021 we've got the Stormfellers project that I teased at the end of last week's video. We also have a collective goal on Patreon that when hit, Mark and I will create a new episode of Character Select every month for patrons. In winter of 2020, I'm releasing a book called Crafting Characters. It's the book that I wished I had when I was learning that will function not just as a learning resource once, but as something you can revisit when you're struggling with a design, sort of a survival guide for character design. In August of 2020, Tay is releasing a book called Writing Complete Characters, which if you tuned into her storytelling talk, you'll know will be a great tool for the craft of writing and telling stories with characters. And that book is actually already up for pre-order now on brookeseggleston.com/shop under storytelling aids. A lot of things, but the thing that is happening the soonest of all is this. Take a look. In 2016, I released a course called Learn Character Design. It was over 10 hours of video learning that helped hundreds of students learn the fundamentals of character design and create their own stories. In the 5 years since that course came out, I've taught high school art classes, mentored and critiqued online, and of course made hundreds of weekly videos on Character Design Forge. I've also grown in my own character design and drawing skills to a point where I'm not only confident, but I feel like I can teach and explain those ideas infinitely better. So it's not enough to just update the existing course. It's being completely remade from the ground up as the new Learn Character Design course. The original course was linear, where you worked from point A to point B. The new Learn Character Design course functions as 6 individual modules, the 3 primary ones focusing on drawing, design, and story, and 3 secondary modules off of that. There will be a recommended order, but these can each be completed in the order you choose, and we'll be working to make the modules available individually as an affordable option to gradually progress through the course or pick up on a skill you're most interested in making progress in. If you're an existing student for the Learn Character Design course from the past, thank you. You're going to receive a discount on the new course. 100% off. Yep, the new Learn Character Design course is a free upgrade for all existing students. That means you can technically pre-order the new Learn Character Design course by purchasing the existing one, and you'll automatically be upgraded when it releases. And when will it release? June 30th, 2020. We're hard at work putting together a practical, easy-to-grasp course that will help you create characters for comics, animation, games, and more that you can follow along with on your time and schedule. Keep an eye out on learncharacterdesign.com. The weekend was a ton of fun, and our plan is to do a similar event this coming fall, and we hope we can have you there. You can keep the forge burning on Patreon, where there's a new Biko's backpack for May called Hope and Fluff, and you can keep up on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at Bagel Denizen. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating.